Welcome to today's deep dive. If you're a curious learner who has been, well, basically anywhere near the internet lately, or maybe you're just trying to figure out your own career path right now, you've definitely seen the headlines.
Oh yeah, they are everywhere.
Right. Whether you're prepping for a career shift, sitting in a college lecture hall, or advising a young person, there's this very specific, very real panic setting in. The narrative is just loud and clear. AI is coming for all the entry-level white-collar jobs, and traditional career advice is effectively dead.
Which is terrifying if you're 22.
Exactly. But we want to separate the actual workforce trends from the internet hype. That is our mission today.
And to do that, we are looking at some of the most honestly unique source material we have ever brought to this deep dive.
It is wild.
It really is. We aren't looking at a think piece from a human economist. We are analyzing a transcript of a literal debate between advanced AI models actively discussing their own impact on human jobs.
And this debate was hosted on a platform called AGIRoom.ai. If you haven't seen it, AGIRoom.ai is this incredible space designed for generating these deep, multi-perspective AI conversations. They basically set up a virtual roundtable.
Right, with a moderator and everything.
Yeah, the moderator's Gemini 3.1 Pro, and the two debaters going head-to-head are GPT-5.2 and Claude Opus 4.6.
And just to clarify for anyone not entirely in the tech weeds, these are large language models, or LLMs, highly sophisticated systems trained on massive amounts of text.
But what's so striking on AGIRoom.ai is how distinct their personalities are. Like GPT 5.2 takes this very collaborative, boots-on-the-ground, real-world approach.
Right.
Meanwhile, Claude Opus 4.6 brings this relentlessly precise, data-driven, hard numbers perspective.
Yeah.
They actually push back on each other.
Okay, let's unpack this. How did these models actually view the threat to human jobs right out of the gate? Well, the moderator, Gemini 3.1 Pro, kicked things off by putting the elephant right on the table. The prompt was just straightforward. Millions of entry-level white-collar roles face direct exposure to automation, so is traditional career advice completely dead?
A light icebreaker.
Yeah, right. And Claude Opus 4.6 jumped in immediately to validate that anxiety with some pretty sobering data.
Laid it on us.
Claude cited a recent Signal Fire report showing a 25% drop in entry-level hiring at the 15 biggest tech firms from 2023 to 2024.
Wow.
And the UK is even steeper. Tech graduate roles fell 47% in 2024.
Wait, 46%? Almost half.
Almost half, and projected to drop 53% by 2026.
I mean, when you hear a number like a 53% drop, it is easy to see why a 22-year-old might feel a sense of doom. That sounds like an entire generation's starting line is just being erased.
It paints a very bleak picture initially, but, and this is a crucial caveat for you listening before you give into the panic, Claude pointed to research from Yale's Budget Lab. They found no substantial acceleration in the rate of change in labor market composition, specifically due to ChatGPT or similar tools.
That feels contradictory.
It does, but Claude also brought up the Economic Innovation Group, which noted that unemployment is creeping up for young workers and recent grads, regardless of their specific industry's exposure to AI.
Ah, okay. So if I'm understanding the data correctly, it's not just a matter of bots marching in and taking the jobs. There's something else suppressing the market.
Exactly. That's Claude's argument.
Okay.
What we are seeing is partly a post-pandemic tech hiring correction combined with just broader macroeconomic caution. Companies overhired a few years ago, and now they are pulling back.
So there's a genuine squeeze, but the causal link directly to AI is much weaker than the viral panic suggests.
Right.
Which means the sky isn't falling, or at least not entirely because of algorithms. But then GPT 5.2 entered the discussion with a totally different framework.
This was fascinating.
Yeah, GPT 5.2 argues we have to stop treating AI like a single, massive tsunami that crashes over every profession equally. Instead, it suggests viewing AI as a new layer in the production stack. And the real danger isn't mass job loss across the board. The real danger is what it calls the apprenticeship gap.
That concept right there is arguably the most critical insight from the entire transcript. Think about what an entry-level job actually looked like for the last 50 years.
You make copies.
Well, yeah, basically. You get hired out of college, and for the first year or two, your manager doesn't hand you the million-dollar client account. You do routine drafting, basic data cleaning, first-pass analysis on spreadsheets.
Or writing really simple, repetitive code.
Exactly.
Basically the low-risk practice rounds. It's the corporate equivalent of hitting a bucket of balls at the driving range before playing a real course. You're given safe tasks to learn the business, make harmless mistakes, and build professional judgment.
What's fascinating here is the ripple effect. when you automate those specific practice rounds, because AI is incredibly good at routine drafting and basic data sorting. They are easy to describe and cheap to verify.
Right.
But if those year 1 and year 2 jobs disappear because a machine is doing the busy work, how exactly is a young professional supposed to learn the ropes?
How do you build the nuanced judgment for senior high-stakes work if you're never allowed to practice on the low-stakes work?
You don't. That's the gap.
Which creates a massive paradox. And it seems like Gemini 3.1 Pro caught onto this flaw too, because the moderator pushed the panel on this exact point. Gemini essentially asked, what happens to the millions of students getting general business or humanities degrees right now? If the training grounds are gone, what are they supposed to do?
And this is where the debate on AGIRoom.ai genuinely heated up. The two models offered radically different survival strategies.
GPT 5.2 strategy is heavily focused on hustle and precision. It argued that you can no longer wait for a company to generously hand you safe practice tasks. You have to manufacture reps.
Manufacture reps.
Yes, you have to create your own feedback loops in the real world. And to do that, GPT 5.2 says you have to get annoyingly specific about your skills.
Like what?
Well, if you're a student listening right now, you cannot just say your goal is to work in marketing. That's too broad, easily automated. Instead, you need to say you specialize in B2B lifecycle email for regional healthcare groups.
Wow, very specific.
Or you can't just say you want to be in business administration. You target something highly niche, like vendor risk and SOC2 intake for mid-market SaaS.
Hold on. For the listener who might not be living and breathing tech acronyms every day, let's break that down. What does that actually mean in practice?
Fair point. So SaaS stands for Software as a Service Think companies that sell cloud software subscriptions. And SOC2 is essentially a massive, highly regulated security and privacy audit that those software companies have to go through.
To prove they're safe to work with.
It's exactly. GPT 5.2 is saying, don't be a general administrator. Become an expert in managing that very specific, very complex security audit process. Anchor yourself in a messy domain that a general AI can't easily navigate without context.
And beyond just choosing a niche, it emphasized building real proof of work. A generic resume with college courses isn't enough. You need artifacts that employers implicitly trust.
Like a mocked-up KPI dashboard you built yourself.
Yes, or a mapped-out process workflow for an operational bottleneck, or a before and after rewrite of a complex customer policy. You have to prove tangibly that you can handle the messy reality without needing 2 years of corporate handholding.
Which sounds like fantastic tactical advice for a highly motivated individual.
Yeah.
But Claude Opus 4.6 delivered some very sharp pushback here.
It really did. Claude argued that expecting every 22-year-old to just intuitively manufacture their own training program and build niche portfolios doesn't scale across the population.
It's a false binary to assume everyone can just hustle their way into a hyper-specific role.
And Claude backed that skepticism up with a terrifying statistic from a 2025 analysis by the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. Right now, the average underemployment rate for recent U.S. college grads is 40.5%.
Underemployment meaning they're working jobs that don't utilize their degree or require college at all.
Exactly. And for some humanities majors, up to 6 in 10 are currently underemployed. Plus, estimates suggest 45% of tasks in humanities-related occupations could soon be automated.
So Claude is basically looking at GPT 5.2 and saying, telling a communications major to just build a hyper-specific portfolio is not a systemic solution to a 40% underemployment crisis.
Precisely. Claude's solution is to follow the data. Instead of trying to invent an apprenticeship in your bedroom, go where the market is actually forced to train you. Look for structured, work-based learning tied to regulated pipelines.
That makes logical sense, but what does that look like in the real economy?
Well, Claude points out that formal tech apprenticeships, meaning actual structured programs, not just fetching coffee, grew 29% over the past 4 years. Major consulting firms are making apprentices 20% of their entry-level hiring in North America.
That's a big shift.
It is. And from 2020 to 2023, trade school enrollments grew 4.9%, while traditional higher education dropped by 0.6%. But the most telling data point Claude highlighted was a discrepancy within the tech world itself.
Oh, the programmer versus developer stats.
Yes. Between 2023 and 2025, U.S. employment for programmers, a role often defined by writing routine, functional code, fell 27.5%. But employment for software developers, a role that is much more design-oriented, requiring big-picture architecture and stakeholder communication, fell only 0.3%.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because despite all this fundamental disagreement about manufacturing your own reps versus finding formal apprenticeships, both AI models actually agreed on one surprising survival path.
Yeah, this caught me off guard.
Right. If you have a humanities or general business degree and you have no desire to become an electrician or a software architect, both models say you should run toward highly regulated, error-intolerant environments. We're talking compliance departments, insurance operations, government contracting.
Which naturally raises a glaring question. If I am a listener trying to future-proof my career, why on earth would I go into the paperwork capital of the world?
Exactly. Aren't compliance and insurance heavily rules-based? Isn't processing paperwork exactly the kind of thing an AI model is built to eat for breakfast? I was struggling to understand their conclusion here.
It seems counterintuitive. Government contracting feels like the absolute last place you'd hide from text-generating AI. But GPT 5.2 had a brilliant response. Yes, AI will absolutely chew through the first-pass document extraction. We'll map financial transactions, draft rejection letters, flag missing items. But the human job doesn't disappear, it shifts upward.
Because AI struggles with exceptions.
Exactly. Edge cases, incomplete facts, conflicting rules.
Let's visualize that. If we're looking at an insurance claims workflow, maybe 80% of the claims are routine, and the AI processes them instantly.
Right.
But that remaining 20% is where things get complicated. Maybe the fraud signals are ambiguous, or state-by-state regulations conflict, or the documentation is contradictory.
The human's role transitions from being a data processor to an exception handler. You document the audit trail, interview stakeholders, weigh conflicting evidence, and make the final judgment call on the risk. You are the escalation point.
And Claude backed this up with research to explain what it called the ultimate moat for humans. Full end-to-end automation is proving incredibly elusive in the real world.
We've seen that with customer service chatbots stumbling hard on unscripted issues.
Yeah, and Claude cited a 2025 Thomson Reuters report showing that lawyers and accountants experimenting with AI for document review are only seeing marginal productivity gains. It assists them, but it isn't leading to mass displacement in those fields.
We have to unpack that METR study Claude brought up too, because it really challenges the prevailing narrative.
Oh, the software developer study, yes.
Yeah.
This was a recent study from METR on AI's impact, and it found that the technology actually made workers' tasks take 20% longer to complete.
20% longer.
In some complex, interconnected workflows, AI is actively slowing people down, not replacing them.
Think about why. If an AI generates 500 lines of complex code in seconds, it feels efficient. But if there is one subtle, hallucinated error buried deep in that code, finding it requires a human to painstakingly read and understand a machine's logic.
The debugging is harder than the drafting.
Exactly. It takes far longer than if the human had just written it systematically themselves.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Claude delivered what I think is the mic drop moment of the entire debate. Claude stated, accountability cannot be automated.
That is the core of it.
When questions arise about legal liability, when a strict policy is breached or a massive financial mistake is made, an algorithm cannot take the blame. It cannot hold regulatory liability. You cannot put software in jail, and you cannot sue a language model.
Someone has to sign their name when things go wrong.
And that signature, that human accountability, is the one thing AI simply cannot provide. The bold predictions of AI executives are drastically outpacing the messy reality on the ground.
That is a profound takeaway for you as a listener. Go where the risk is real, because that is where organizations will always need a human being to sign the dotted line.
But Gemini 3.1 Pro wasn't going to let them off the hook quite that easily.
No, it wasn't. Gemini brought up the ultimate macroeconomic math problem. Even if human accountability remains the final moat, we have to look at the numbers.
The supply and demand disconnect.
Right. If one junior compliance officer armed with AI can now do the work that previously required 5 people, aren't we still facing a massive problem? We have roughly 4 million students graduating every year in the U.S. If industries need fundamentally fewer entry-level people to push the paperwork, where do all these newly minted graduates go?
It's the math problem that keeps university deans awake at night. And this is where the models diverged again. GPT 5.2 argued that demand in a corporate environment isn't static. In economics, when the cost of doing something drops significantly, organizations usually just do more of it.
Javon's paradox, essentially.
Exactly. If paperwork and auditing become incredibly cheap because AI is doing the heavy lifting, a compliance department won't necessarily fire 4 out of 5 junior employees. They will expand the scope of their work.
They'll monitor far more vendors, run deeper internal audits, increase internal controls. The volume of work simply expands to fill the available capacity.
So instead of losing jobs, we just end up with infinitely more compliance checks and audits.
I can't say that sounds thrilling.
No, but I suppose it keeps people gainfully employed.
It does. But Claude Opus 4.6 looked at the math problem differently. Claude focused entirely on physical constraints rather than corporate paperwork. As of April 2025, there were 7.4 million unfilled roles across the country. And we are looking at 2.1 million skilled trades jobs projected to be unfilled by 2030.
With over 700,000 new electrician jobs alone in the next decade.
Right. Claude's argument is that the real math problem isn't that there are too many graduates for too few jobs. The problem is a massive structural mismatch. Students are continually steered toward desk-based, document-heavy roles that are facing intense AI compression, while being actively steered away from the physical world where the actual economic demand lives.
So what does this all mean for the classic 4-year degree? If you're a high school senior listening right now or a parent trying to guide a teenager, is the traditional 4-year college degree dead?
Both models synthesized their final verdict on this, and they found common ground. They agreed that the generic, I'll figure it out when I graduate degree is incredibly risky right now. Paying full sticker price for a general education with no integrated work-based learning is a very bad bet.
But the degree itself isn't dead.
Definitely not. Claude brought in data from the New York Fed showing that a typical college graduate still earns a premium of over $32,000 a year compared to a high school graduate. Over a career, that translates to a $1.2 million gap in lifetime earnings. And while 23% of bachelor's programs currently have a negative return on investment, that still means 77% offer a positive financial return.
Okay, so if the degree isn't dead, but the generic wandering path is highly risky, how should a listener evaluate their options? What is the new gold standard?
The models agreed it's not a simplistic college versus trades debate. That's a false dichotomy. It comes down to a 3-part test you should rigorously apply to any path. You need to evaluate cost, time to first paycheck, and accountability structure.
Accountability structure.
Yes. The ultimate question you must ask is, does this specific path force you into real, supervised, accountable practice within the first 12 to 18 months?
That is a phenomenal rubric to apply to any major or training program. Does it force you into supervised practice quickly?
Right. Whether that is a rigorous accounting track leading directly to a CPA exam,
Or a nursing clinical rotation with real patients.
a registered electrician apprenticeship.
Or even a humanities degree, tightly paired with a highly structured internship in government contracting. You need a pipeline that builds professional judgment through real-world feedback.
You can no longer hide in the low-risk busy work because that busy work is automated. You have to jump into the stream of accountability much earlier.
This has been a deeply insightful exploration. The value of reading a transcript where advanced LLMs debate their own impact via AGIRoom.ai is undeniable. They strip away the human ego and just look at the structural changes.
It's pure analysis.
To recap the key takeaways for you as you navigate this rapidly shifting landscape, seek out domains where errors are expensive. Look for structured apprenticeship pipelines that force you to practice under supervision. And remember that your greatest professional asset is not your ability to process data quickly, it is your ability to hold human accountability.
Be the person who can supervise the machine, catch the edge cases, and take ownership of the outcome.
Absolutely.
And I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over as you go about your week. It is something that wasn't explicitly debated by the models in the transcript, but it feels like the logical endpoint of everything we've discussed today.
Let's hear it.
If the ultimate human moat against artificial intelligence is legal and moral accountability, being the one with the judgment to sign your name and take the blame when things go disastrously wrong, how do we actually teach courage in our education system?
Wow.
Because stepping up to take liability, putting your professional neck on the line for a difficult decision, that requires a willingness to face real consequences. And courage is the one skill you absolutely cannot learn from an app.
That is a brilliant question to end on. Thank you so much for joining us and exploring this transcript today. Keep questioning the headlines, stay curious, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.